Change continues to come to the New York Islanders as one of the team's defensemen announces they will be returning to Europe next season. We've got that and a lot more coming up on today's Locked On Islanders podcast.
Your Locked On Islanders, your daily podcast on the New York Islanders. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And welcome, everybody, to the Friday edition of the Locked On Islanders podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I want to thank everyone who makes Locked On Islanders your first listen every day. Don't forget to subscribe on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts so you can get new episodes as soon as they drop. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. We've got a lot to discuss on today's show, but first, if there's something Islanders related on your mind, if you have a question, a comment, maybe a topic you'd like us to discuss on a future episode, you can email us at lockedonislanders@gmail.com. And if you leave your first name and where you're from, we're happy to mention you on the show when we talk about whatever it is that's on your mind. You could also follow the show on X at Locked On Isles, and you could follow me, Gil Martin, on X at Ice Wars, NYR VSNYI. We'll keep you up to date on all things Islanders all year long in the offseason. That means hirings, firings, trade rumors, the draft, free agency. If it's happening to the Islanders, we'll cover it for you here on the Locked On Islanders podcast. And it's always great to talk Islanders hockey with you, game time or anytime. So some news breaking on Thursday, and I would say it's kind of notable. A former Islander, now a former Islander, returning to Europe, Robin Salo. The Islanders' second-round pick back in 2017 has agreed to a 2-year deal with Malmö in Sweden, according to a report by Expressen.se, which is a Swedish website. Salo basically came over to North America in 2021-2022 after playing in Sweden. The defenseman played 21 games with the Islanders that year, 1 goal, 5 points, and a -6 plus-minus rating. Spent the rest of that season with Bridgeport, played 40 games there. And then in 2022-2023, 11 games with the Islanders, 2 goals, 4 points, 4 penalty minutes, and a +1 rating, and then spent the rest of that season with Bridgeport as well. And then this past season, Salo did not appear in a game with the NHL Islanders, did play 68 games for the Bridgeport Islanders, where he had 5 goals, 24 points, 22 penalty minutes, and was a -19. Now, again, plus-minus, very much also a team stat. And, it makes sense that his plus-minus would be -19 when the Islanders, basically the Bridgeport Islanders struggled all year long. And, that they are where they are. So the -19 is, well, let's just say, hardly a surprise. And, to lose Salo overall is certainly a disappointment for the Islanders. Why? Well, you're talking about a guy who basically was a second-round draft pick. And you would want a second-round draft pick to be, part of your plans. You don't draft a guy in the second round figuring he'll play 25 games or so, 32 games, total in the NHL and then be stuck in the minors. But look, Salo is a left shot defenseman. He is now 25 years old. He will be 26 early on this season, October 13th. And realistically, his chances of playing for the New York Islanders, not very good this year. I mean, ahead of him on the depth chart at left shot defenseman, you have Adam Pelech, who has a full no trade clause. You have Alexander Romanov, definitely, in at that position. You have Mike Riley if the Islanders bring him back. You have Sebastian Aho if the Islanders bring him back. You have Samuel Bolduc also available. And, then, in the minors, I would say Kaliodelius probably passing Salo now on the depth chart. And it just isn't looking like there's an opening for him. And Isaiah George, who will be joining Bridgeport, will almost certainly be taking the place, perhaps, of Robin Salo. So Salo, I understand the move from his perspective. And, Salo was second on Bridgeport among defensemen with 24 points in 68 games this year. Did not score any goals on the power play. So, that it wasn't a big part of that. There just wasn't any place realistically for Robin Salo to go if he were to stay with this team. And look, I wish Robin Salo well back in Europe. And, maybe, he has experience playing in Sweden. And maybe, just maybe, his style of play is a little better suited to that. I mean, his last year in Sweden, he had 6 goals and 30 points in 51 games. That is more than he had in any season here in North America. And Salo, who is Finnish, obviously would be much closer to home and probably would have an opportunity to make a little more money over there, only because clearly he has been getting an AHL salary, whereas over in Sweden, he would have the opportunity to play in the elite league and be at the highest level there professionally, something he clearly would not be able to do here in North America. So, if you're the Islanders and you're sort of looking at this situation, we've talked about the difficulties that the Islanders basically have had with developing prospects, and now Robin Salo is added to that list, and you sort of go back and look at the Islanders draft from 2017. They didn't have a first-round pick. Robin Salo played 32 games. He is now heading back to Europe. Only 2 other players from that draft even appeared in an NHL game. 5th-round pick Sebastian Aho, who we'll be talking about later on. And then 6th-round pick Arnaud Durando, who has played a grand total of 4 NHL games. So, again, the draft for the Islanders and the development, it's been a little bit of an issue. And, you look at 2016, only 2 players from that draft made it to the NHL. None of them played 100 games. Again, only Sebastian Aho played more than 32 games out of the 2017 class. It's not the greatest track record with the draft so far for the New York Islanders just in recent years, and that is something that is going to have to change quickly if this team hopes to avoid a very long and difficult rebuild or retool in the very near future when this aging team does continue to slow down. We have got a lot more to get to on today's show. The Athletic had a poll about each NHL team's individual television broadcast crew. We're going to talk about where the Islanders crew ranked on that survey. Plus, we'll continue our player-by-player review of the Islanders with Sebastian Aho. And for our Islanders birthday of the day, a defenseman who played with the Islanders in the mid to late 1990s for 3 seasons before playing for Vancouver, Chicago, Toronto, Florida, and briefly the Rangers. So see if you can guess who that is. All that and more coming up on today's Locked On Islanders podcast. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Game Time makes getting NBA Finals tickets even faster and easier, and prices on the Game Time app actually go down the closer it gets to tip-off. They have killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, their lowest price guarantee, so Game Time takes the guesswork out of buying NBA tickets. My favorite feature by far is the view from your seat. You go on the Game Time app, and before you actually purchase the tickets, you can get a panoramic view of what you'll see from your seat so you know exactly what to expect when you arrive. Take the guesswork out of buying NBA Finals tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Download Game Time today. Last-minute tickets, lowest prices guaranteed. Are you watching Fox Sports or ESPN on your TV all day? Have to turn down the volume with all that shouting? Make the switch to Locked On Sports Today, a free 24/7 streaming channel program for you every day to bring you the biggest stories without all the screaming. Locked On Sports Today brings you can't-miss analysis, opinions, and news, streaming 24/7 on YouTube or the free Amazon Fire TV channels app. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. So the Athletic had ranked all 32 NHL teams' broadcasts, their local broadcasts. And, well, it was an interesting result. You'll be perhaps surprised as to which team won, came in first. But the Islanders, well, they did pretty darn well, actually finishing 6th in the league. The duo of Brendan Burke and Butch Goring scoring highly. Thomas Hickey also highly regarded for what he does as far as in between periods and often between the benches. And some great shout outs also for Shannon Hogan, who, again, brings energy and clearly is always having fun during the Islanders broadcast. So last year, the Islanders broadcasting team ranked 7th. This year they ranked 6th, so they move up a spot. It's interesting. Locally, Islander fans ranked them 3rd. Whereas nationally, they fell to 11th. And I guess the reason for that more than anything is Butch Goring, where Islander fans love Goring's unique style and personality. They certainly find him engaging, and they appreciate, obviously, his link to the dynasty years. And, look, Butch Goring has been part of this organization now for 44 years with a couple of years in Boston and elsewhere in between. But, since March of 1980, Butch Goring has been a part of the Islanders organization, whether it's as a broadcaster, a head coach, a scout, an assistant coach, coaching in the minor leagues, or as a player. So, he's done it all for this organization, and Islander fans certainly love him. But I guess, his style, if you're not familiar with him, some people, not appreciating it as much. And as far as Brendan Burke goes, Islander fans love him. National fans love him. And that has been the biggest concern for Islander fans that Burke may end up leaving the MSG network and going elsewhere as he gets more and more national attention from the media. But great to see that the Islanders broadcast team ranking sixth. The top five, by the way, the Detroit Red Wings, number one, the Seattle Kraken, and they're obviously, one of the new broadcast teams, but John Forsland being there certainly helps. They're number two. The Dallas Stars are third. Fourth, the Vancouver Canucks. But in fifth, the New York Rangers. So the Rangers edge out the Islanders. But great to see Sam Rosen get some positive attention there. And, he's been around a very long time. And then, of course, Joe Micheletti, who started with the Islanders broadcast and then moved to the Rangers broadcast later on. But got to be proud of the Islanders team finishing sixth, moving up a spot from a year ago. And if you're wondering who the bottom three were, and again, these are very subjective, the Columbus Blue Jackets finishing 30th, but again, Jeff Rimmer, he retired, so there'll be a new broadcaster there. The Blackhawks, 31st. That's actually up a spot from a year ago. And the Boston Bruins, who, Bruin fans love the Bruins, although Jack Edwards retired at the end of the year. But, most other fans who are not Bruins fans and get to watch those games tend not to like the style because they are very big homers there on Nesson. But anyway, those were the bottom three, but the Islanders finished sixth, and you just like to see how well they did, and it's deserved because Brendan Burke, Butch Goring, you have a nice combination of, Goring's unique personality, his quirkiness, his Islanders perspective, and Burke with absolute professionalism. Thomas Hickey giving a lot of insight as well. And then the enthusiasm and the infectious energy of Shannon Hogan. So the Islanders have a good team broadcasting their games, and let's hope that team can stay together for a while and continue to give us some really good broadcast games for the Islanders. And I know, how the Islanders broadcast team is good? Anytime the Islanders are on an ESPN Plus or TNT exclusive game, fans are always saying, these announcers, not Brandon and Butch, just not. And I get it. And it's a good thing. By the way, Stanley Cup Finals getting underway this weekend. Wanted to briefly talk about my prediction. I have to pull for Florida in this series. I have nothing against the Edmonton Oilers, but for Kyle Oposo, I would like to see him get his name etched on the Stanley Cup. I really think he, deserves that. We had put our poll up on our YouTube page. 284 people voted, and 57% said they wanted the Panthers to win. 24% said the Oilers, and 19% said, I just want to see good hockey. I'm not necessarily rooting for either team. But my pick for this series, it's going to be close. I think it's going 7 games. I think that the Florida Panthers will wear down the Edmonton Oilers just enough and pull off the win in 7. So we'll see how it goes, but that is my pick for the series. And don't forget that coming up on Monday for Game 2, we will have our little watch party for Locked On Islanders at the main event in Plainview. And again, the link in the show notes will basically, if you're interested, please let us know. It's lockedonislanders.wordpress.com. So, let us know if you can make it, if you're interested in making it, and hopefully we'll see you there Monday night. Should be fun to watch a little hockey and just put some faces to the names that we know so well here in the Locked On Islanders family. All right. We've got more to get to on today's show. We continue our player-by-player review of the season with Sebastian Aho, and we'll have our Islanders birthday of the day. All that and more still to come on today's Locked On Islanders podcast. Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube, and now it's available on Amazon Fire TV and the free Fire TV channels app. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows covering every league. Find Locked On Sports Today now available on the free Fire TV channels app. So we continue our player-by-player review of the Islanders season with Sebastian Aho. And I got to say, I have always liked Sebastian Aho, but again, I have always found him to be, well, a little bit limited. He's officially listed at 5'10", 186 pounds. He's 28 years old, turned 28 back in February. On the year this year, kind of had a reduced role. Only played 58 games after playing 71 the previous season. 2 goals, 9 points, was a -7, plus/minus 12 penalty minutes. And, again, to me, Aho is pretty good with the puck, but not great. He skates well. He's a good passer. He has good hockey sense, but as a defenseman, his lack of size limits him, and it does often get him into trouble in his own zone. And it's not that he is a bad defensive player. He's the kind of guy who plays positionally sound most of the time, but he will lose 50-50 puck battles because he gets out-muscled, and his lack of size really limits him. He did block 72 shots. That's a career high, and 3 more than he had in 13 more games the previous season. His hit total is up also 42. That's another career high, and again, 4 more in 13 fewer games. His ice time, 16:23, and again, his lack of size limits him to being a third-pair defenseman. And ideally, on a good team, Sebastian Aho is your 7th defenseman. He's the kind of guy who you can plug in, especially on the left side, although he has, even though he's a left-handed shot, lined up to the right, he has that versatility. But again, he is also an unrestricted free agent. And you know that you have Samuel Bolduc going to earn less money, most likely, than Aho. Has 1 more year left on his contract. You could probably sign Mike Riley for about the same amount that you would sign Aho, and Riley gives you a little more offensively and has more size than Aho. I do not think Aho is likely to be back. If he is, he's probably the 7th or 8th defenseman on the depth chart. And, the sad thing in my mind about Sebastian Aho is that those size limitations, there's nothing he can do about it. He can play smarter. He can, and he does. He can be positionally sound, and he is. But when push comes to shove, when it's Sebastian Aho, 5'10", 186, going up against a forward who's 6'2", 200, most of the time, Aho's going to lose that battle in front of the net, going to lose that battle for the puck behind the goal, in the corners, and, he can be physically not intimidated necessarily, but overmatched, and that can lead to some turnovers. I like Sebastian Aho. If the Islanders could sign him for $1 million a year or less and keep him on the roster as a 7th or 8th defenseman as an insurance policy. I have no objection to that, but I don't see him as being somebody who has a major role on the Islanders if he returns to the island and re-signs with the team for 2024, 2025. We'll see what happens, but overall, I would have to think that Aho is, going to test the free agent market, and would it shock me if he followed Robin Salo back to Europe also, if that's what he wants to do, if there's not enough interest from another NHL team? Wouldn't shock me, but again, we'll see what happens, and I like Sebastian Aho. I wish him luck regardless of where he ends up. Time now for our Islanders birthday of the day, and Saturday will be the 49th birthday of former Islanders defenseman Bryan McCabe, the St. Catharines, Ontario native, second-round pick of the Isles in 1993. Made his NHL debut with the Islanders in 95-96, had 7 goals, 23 points, and 156 penalty minutes that year. His best year with the Isles was 96-97, 8 goals, 28 points, and 165 penalty minutes. Played all 82 games in each of his first 2 seasons, and then was traded late in the 97-98 season to Vancouver. Later played for Chicago, Toronto, Florida, and finished his career with a 19-game stint with the Rangers. Had a good career, did Bryan McCabe. 6'2", 223. He had good size, played 1,135 games, 145 goals, 528 points, and yes, 1,732 penalty minutes, add 10 goals, 28 points in 56 playoff games for Bryan McCabe. And, he played in 1 All-Star game, never did win a Stanley Cup, but again, enjoyed a very good career after he left the Islanders. One of his better games with the Islanders, December 10th, 1995, at the old Spectrum in Philadelphia. Islanders visiting the Flyers. Tommy Soderstrom, the goalie for the Isles. Ron Hextall and Garth Snow both ended up playing in this game for Philadelphia. And in this game, our Islanders' birthday of the day, Bryan McCabe scores a goal in the second period that puts the Islanders up 5-0. Alexander Semak, Todd Bertuzzi with the assists. And then on the power play in the third period, McCabe assists on a goal by Semak. Marty McGinnis, the other assist. Islanders go on to beat the Flyers by a final score of 6-2. For Bryan McCabe, our Islanders' birthday of the day, a goal, an assist, a +3, 4 penalty minutes. He had 3 shots on goal. And again, the Islanders win this game going away by a score of 6-2. And like many Islander Flyer games back in the day, a lot of rough stuff in this game. Only one fight, that was Bob Sweeney and Eric Lindros dropping the gloves, but a lot of roughing penalties, a couple of misconducts and what have you. But 32 saves for Tommy Soderstrom in this game. 2 goals, 2 assists for Semak. But for Bryan McCabe, a strong performance. He is our Islanders' birthday of the day. I want to thank everyone who makes Locked On Islanders your first listen every day. Everydayers, we're back on Monday, and we will talk a little bit about Kyle McLean, his season with the team. Has he earned a permanent spot on the team next year? We'll also have any other Islanders news, notes, and happenings, so make sure you join us for that. Have a great weekend, everybody. Stay safe, and of course, let's go Islanders.